At the time the Spaniards arrived to Mexico City, at that time called Mexico Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztecs, that town was tied in the third place in the world for the title of biggest town. The biggest town around 1521 was Beijing already. The second town was Baghdad. Beijing had already like 1 million people. Baghdad had like 600,000 inhabitants. And the third biggest towns in the world were Constantinople, but that time already called Istanbul, which is now Turkey, a Greek town before, and Mexico Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztecs. We are not talking about a few Indians, some tribe. We are talking about the third biggest town in the world. We are talking about something that the Spaniards, coming from a country in which the biggest town was Seville with 40,000 people, never saw something like that. They arrived in the Valley of Mexico and they saw this town in the middle of a lake, like a huge Venice, much bigger than Venice, in the middle of a lake, with 300,000 inhabitants. We are talking about a country that was in equal standing with any other country in the world at that time. That's why we need really to make an effort with our imagination to understand that the discovery, the conquest and the colonization of the Aztecs is one of the tragedies in modern history. Aztecs is actually a bad name for the Aztecs. They never call themselves Aztecs. They call themselves Mexicas. And Mexico Tenochtitlan was the capital of the Mexicans or Mexicas, and Tenoch was the mythical leader. That's what Tenochtitlan is, the town of Tenoch, Mexico Tenochtitlan. And they never spoke Aztec, they spoke Nahuatl, and the Nahuatl language is still spoken today in Mexico for over 4 million people. That means the Aztecs are still among us. Every time we eat tacos, every time we eat pozole, every time we eat that type of Mexican food, we are eating Aztec food, for example. It's so present among us. The Aztecs, as Carlos Fuentes, the great Mexican writer, said, were an empire at odds with themselves, or with itself, the empire, because they were a ruthless military empire, dominating thousands of other Mexicans, and using human sacrifice as a means to terrorize other people, other, not even tribes, other nations in Mexico. And the very nature, this military and this very cruel nature of the Aztec society determined that when Hernán Cortés, the Spanish conqueror, came to Mexico, he saw that it was going to be possible to make an alliance with other Native Americans to fight the Mexicans and to defeat them. What happened is that these Mexican nations didn't understand that by helping the Spaniards to defeat the Aztecs, they were actually bringing upon themselves a huge tragedy with a new master, a new owner that was going to be 1,000 times worse. Somebody that was going to destroy their civilization, enslave them, take their lands, change their religion, change their culture forever. That's one of the tragedies of the defeats of the Aztecs. Talking about human sacrifice, yes, they were really, really extreme about that, and they paid a price. And that's well studied and developed in the course that you are going to take. This is a clay Aztec flute. And it's a piercing instrument. It's very powerful. Actually, it must sound like that. The temptation when you grab an instrument like this one is to play like a recorder. Try to make a soft, nice tone like. That's not the sound. You are supposed to blow hard and get all those partials. That's how the clay flutes sounded, and it still sounds today in Mexico. And we're going to say that's a common trait in other flutes in other cultures, the hard blowing into the Native American flutes. Whistles with the shapes of different animals or people. In this case, we can see the big earrings of somebody. This double whistle. Another whistle representing a pregnant woman. And these are double flute with 6 holes. There are 2 of those. These are 2 of the huge variety of Aztec flutes of clay, reed, wood, and bone that we can still find today. This is a log drum, a modern one, but it's based in the traditional Aztec teponaztle, which is essentially you cut tongues in the wood, and depending on the length and the size of the wood, they have different sound. And all of these are the same type of development of the old Aztec teponaztle, but with different makers and different technical specifications. And there is a different one here. That one has 6 wooden tongues. This one has many more and gives you more possibility of sounds. Beautiful, deep sound. I really love these instruments, and you're going to see how the Aztecs have been using these throughout history.